Small Island by Angela Levy.
No doubt Max's son will cherish the letter from Flight Lieutenant Moon. It will almost certainly say that their father died on active service, a corporal in the RAF, a boy in blue, forever remembered that way. A framed photograph on the mantelpiece, a Burma star in a case. Their father died fighting for his country on active service in India. What better words could there be for a son to cherish? They could be proud of their dad. There were times I wished I'd died alongside him in that basher. I was the only Englishman left in that prison. Most of the others had gone home or were moved somewhere more secure. The 2-week sentence would soon be up, the sergeant had said. Take the punishment, then forget about it. 2 weeks, that was all. Then the RAF shut me up in a cell with 4 Indian coolies. This leading aircraftman, this Englishman, locked up with the loose wallet, the thieves, the scoundrels the RAF took such pains to guard against. But I had the same kind of mattress as them, rolled onto a stone floor hard as a biscuit ration. Same tin mug and plate, same single spoon. Prison wasn't hardship for coolies. Regular meals, no work. They slept all day. Brushed aside the bugs that crawled all over them, jabbered away in their tongue. The withering heat in the small cell didn't trouble these natives. All the dust that circled the fetid air like a sandstorm, used to it. But for an Englishman, the gritty sweat rolled down me night and day, stinging into my eyes, dripping salt into my mouth, itching me senseless, seeping into my mattress until it was as soggy as a biscuit dunked into tea. Couldn't shut my eyes to sleep, not even for the briefest doze. Had a pen and an air letter, you see. The guard, a Tommy, hearing I'd lost all my kit in the fire, brought them for me. Keep these 2 possessions on the floor under my mattress. Thought to write this air letter home to Queenie. Nothing for it, I'd have to make up what was happening. Move to a nicer spot, hope to be home by Christmas, that sort of thing. No need to mention the court-martial, or Flight Lieutenant Moon making an example of me, or the officer who was sent to speak up for me who could find nothing to say about my service record that would change the court's mind and avoid this shameful sentence. 2 weeks in prison amongst the most heinous cellmates a civilized man could devise. Had to rest the air letter on the floor to write it. Turn my back to the coolies, but could still feel them straining to know what the Englishman was doing. Began as always, Dear Queenie, then stopped. Think before you write, the paper urged me, pointed at the top with 2 exclamation marks. Think. I held my pen above that blue flimsy paper on that prison floor. Held it there for so long that the sweat trickled down my arm and dripped off the nib like teardrops. Soon the paper was too soggy to write on, and Dear Queenie had blurred to a blue stain, then running. It was just a blot. Letters went astray. Part of many chaps' grievances. We move so much, you see. In India, it could take months for a letter to catch up. Some never made it. Misunderstandings passing unknown in the post. Bernard, you've been away such a long time. How could I doubt I owed Queenie an explanation? Almost impossible to fashion the words. How to begin to tell. It had been over 2 years since my ship had docked at Southampton. England had shrunk. It was smaller than the place I'd left. Streets, shops, houses. They bore down like crowds, stifling even the feeble light that got through. Behind every face I saw were trapped the remembering of war, the remembering, guarded by a smile, shrouded in a frown. But everyone had them. conflicts, scarring where touched. No point dwelling on your own pitiful story, and silence was the only balm that healed. I doubted I was doing the right thing, even on days when the longing for familiar was as substantial as hunger. To lie with Queenie and to gaze on objects that communed in memories. I had no idea how long the awful disease would take to claim me. No thought of doctors or cures. Shame sort of that. My only worry was that I'd lose my mind, do something rash without Sally's firm hand. But in waiting to die, I felt fit. Found employment, cleaning tables in a cafe. But prior to it, rather dim fellow needed a hand with his bookkeeping. It was tickled pink that his worthless waiter turned out to be useful. He told all his chums, and soon I had a few of them calling on my services. I stopped being a waiter, and double-entry bookkeeping earned me enough for board and lodging. I expected Queenie to be shocked. Could hardly blame her. Husband, back from the dead. But I didn't foretell that appalled would play for quite so long around the corners of her mouth. Sitting there, clutching her stomach, speechless, pale, shaking, eyes rimmed red, she looked older, more careworn. She put on some weight. I'd watched her wither away during that early part of the war, day by day. Not the only husband who'd felt impotent about that. So little Plump looked well on her. Oh, Bernard, I wrote to you. Where have you been? Why didn't you come straight back? Her terrified eyes demanded the more urgent answer. Lost my mind a little, I said. How do you mean? Did you lose your memory? Yeah, something like that. Where were you? On the south coast. In England. Brighton. Brighton? She screamed. I want an answer first, Bernard. I've a right to know. I'm your wife. I thought you were dead. It's been years and you just turn up and say, Brighton? As soon as I walked in the house, I knew he was gone. Pa's chair was no longer by the fire. Your father's dead, she said a little too promptly. Oh, I said. Oh, is that all you can say? Oh. That's what war had done to me. Made death a reasonable thing. She was quite hysterical. The bones in her neck were standing out like scaffolding. She was screeching at me. There was a loud knocking on the door. I thought the person would break it down. I answered it. To find a black man standing there. He looked straight past me, calling, Queenie, Queenie, you all right? And the cheeky blighter looked at me and said, Who are you? Who the bloody hell are you? This is my house, I said. Don't get me vexed, man, he said. I must see Queenie is all right. Queenie soon popped up behind me, more composed. It's all right, Gilbert, she said to this darky. Who is this man, I asked her. Used to coming in, I said. Well, this black man babbled on. Who are you? What's all the commotion? He asked. This is my husband, Gilbert. It's Bernard. That shut him up. Eyes popping out of his head. He stared me up and down, stepped back to get a better look, scratched his head, saying, Well, well. The cheeky blighter put his hand out to shake. Shut the bloody door on him. Felt like a thief. Silly, I know. A man can't burgle his own home. But the turn of the key in the lock, the unfamiliar objects in the room, odd smell, somehow made it all feel clandestine. I knew they'd be out. I'd seen them leave in the morning. His suit, smart, but baggy, like a tramp. She completely overdressed. White gloves on a weekday. They made no attempt to blend. There was a huge trunk blocking most of the doorway, hardly room to turn. I banged a shin trying to navigate between bed and chair. The unpleasant odour clung like dirt. Tatty cloth sprawled over the bed, armchair, limp and wounded, riddled with holes and dead flowers in a jam jar. The place was a disgrace. Ma used to use this room. Sewing, mending, reading and such like. Always, when I lost her, being a little boy, I would climb the stairs. If the door was closed, I knew she was there. I'd tap 3 times, softly. Didn't hear their footsteps on the stairs. Hearing was keen since India, bullets and blasts, sort of that. I would have stood my ground anyway. No harm done. They looked a pitiful sight as they walked in. We all looked at her for a good while, pondering what next. Lost for words on both sides before the darky fellow asked me what I was doing in the room. I told him I was looking around. But the cheeky blighter tells me that this room at the top of my house does in fact belong to him. When I told him that I begged to differ, he looked puzzled by that and gazed at me as if I was the foreigner. And according to him, I could not just come into his room. Somehow I needed his permission. I think not. I can go anywhere I please in my own house, I told him. That started him off. Rent, he shouted. Said he paid plenty of rent, and I tried to shut the conversation down by saying I did not care how much he paid because it was my house. And when he asked me how I got into the room, none of your business, I said. I still showed him the keys, and he still told me to get out. Raised his voice. Quite unnecessary, of course, but I'd learned a sharp lesson already from these people, tutored by his foul-mouthed friend downstairs. There was no reasoning with them. But I fought a war to protect home and hearth, and not... I fought a war. Quite unnecessary, of course, but I'd learned a sharp lesson already from these people, tutored by his foul-mouthed friend downstairs. There was no reasoning with them. But I fought a war to protect home and hearth, and not about to be invaded by stealth. It was his privacy, and he started ranting that he deserved privacy. Yes, deserved privacy. What he deserved was to be thrown out on the street. 4 times he asked me why, standing so close I was having to breathe his air. Nothing for it. Notified him in the end, I'm selling the house. And funny thing, he announced to me the Queenie had never told him this. As if she would. Queenie, he called her. It was Queenie who let him stay here, and Queenie he paid rent to, and Queenie he answered to. Oh, thank you to call her Mrs. Bligh, I said. I'm Queenie. I'm Mrs. Bligh's husband. It is my house, and I wish you to leave. He asked if Queenie knew again and again. Oh, good God, man! I said, do you understand English? You took advantage of her good nature. But now I'm back. We intend to live respectably again. It's what I fought a war for. I was pleased to see Queenie rush through the door. I admit, she yelled, what's going on? Wouldn't even let her catch her breath before he was at her, demanding to know what was happening, pleading to a woman. No shame. I'll thank you to address your comments to me, I said firmly. Shut up, Queenie shouted. At me. Took the wind from me, I admit. Let me talk to them, she said. Shouldn't have to hear that from your wife. These people have to leave. I won't have them in my house. But Queenie started to shout, wants me to be quiet. She said, put a sock in it. Belt it. Calm down. Good God, where were her loyalties? Taking a darkie's side over her own husband. He saw it, of course. Jeered at me to listen to my wife. Gilbert, you can shut up too, she told him, and not before time. Yes, get out, I said. The recipe for a quiet life is each to their own. The war was fought so people might live amongst their own kind. Quite simple. Everyone has a place. England for the English, and the West Indies for these coloured people. Nothing against them in their place, but their place isn't here. Mr. Todd thought they wouldn't even survive one British winter. I hoped he was right. These brown gadabouts were nothing but trouble.